Hi, Exiles. I hope you're having a blessed night. I just spent the past 2 hours rewatching interviews, reading articles, going through the Q&A, and looking for any hidden Path of Exile 2 information that we might have missed. And now, in this video, I'm just going to chill out, lay out some of this interesting, crazy, or just sometimes confusing new information for the upcoming Path of Exile 2 patch 0.5 Return of the Ancients. There's not going to be a lot of production value, flashy effects, anything like that. We're just going to sit here, we're just going to chill, and hopefully look at some secret stuff that you might have missed during the initial overwhelming reveal, because I surely did. Let's start it off with this new unique right here on the Path of Exile 2 page. It's the Captain America Vibranium Shield. Looks like it's one of these many new uniques that are being introduced to the game that completely changes up the playstyle of your character. Looks like you need to be unarmed while using it, but while you're using it, you can use it as a throwing shield, such as we've seen in Hades. We've seen obviously Captain America use it. It also looks like, in addition to this throwing effect we have right here, we can also use slam skills with it. In one of the trailers, you can see this guy using the shield leap up into the air and slam down. I think this is really what they're going for with so many of these unique items, and I am pumped because it's going back to this OG design philosophy of Path of Exile 2, where unique items truly change the way your character functions. They change the visual effects of skills that you're using, and many of the uniques that we saw here, the Raven Staff, the Vibranium Shield, the mace that turns your fire skills to cold and scales with mana, all these are just quite powerful, quite interesting, and if they're not chase items, you know, they'll be defining, I think, a lot of character builds in this upcoming Path of Exile 2 expansion. Then we have a change that appears to be flying under the radar and they didn't focus on in the presentation at all, and that's waystones. It appears that there are 3 different varieties of waystones now: ancient, pristine, and refined, with pristine being the highest tier of waystone. We're not quite sure if this is the new white, yellow, red system of maps, or if these are empowered waystones or in some way, or if this is some greater way to scale waystones, but they are definitely changing the way you are progressing through waystones in Endgame. Some people with eagle eyes also caught that there were a couple areas that players were loading into where the monster level was 90, which is redonkulous. If that new monster level scaling is true, where you are entering monster level 90 areas, the power of loot and the strength of the monsters we're fighting is going to increase massively in this expansion, which is exciting for those who are really seeking a challenge in the end game and have found themselves blowing up everything quite quickly. I, for one, am quite excited for something like this to come to the game if it is true. Remember, they didn't talk about this in the reveal. This is just something that we noticed in the reveal. Would you also be excited to see a far higher ceiling for our characters to push toward when it comes to the strength of monsters and the level of items they can drop? Let me know in the comments. Now, in this interview between Chris Wilson, who used to be the director of Path of Exile, and Jonathan Rogers let slip that there might be a secret Ascendancy notable change for the Acolyte of Chayula when they interact with Chayula during the Breach questline. So if you are a monk enjoyer like I am, I think I'm going to start with the martial artist. Make sure you progress that storyline first and see if it unlocks something powerful for the Acolyte of Chayula or just the monk in general. It's going to be fascinating to see if this is more common with all these league mechanics being changed up, if we're going to get an Abyssal Lich, a Master of Chayula, a Ritualist. Speaking of Ascendancies, we also have almost complete breakdowns of the Spirit Walker and the Martial Artist put together on Reddit from the presentation. So if you're interested in starting your theory crafting before the patch notes hit on May 21st and getting yourselves hyped up for starting as this new Huntress or Monk Ascendancy, well, I will leave them in the description below, as I will with all the other sources in this video. I'm definitely going to be starting the martial artist, but I think I might also try out the spirit walker at some point. I really want to tame the monkey or the crowbell at some point and really see how far I can push a character such as that. We're also getting one of the most beloved and powerful unique items from Path of Exile 1 in Path of Exile 2 with 0.5. That is Mageblood. In Path of Exile 1, Mageblood applies the effects of your utility flasks to you constantly. It's incredibly powerful and an item everybody chases after. In Path of Exile 2, we're not quite sure what it's going to do because we don't have utility flasks. Instead, we have charms, but is it actually going to affect charms? Well, somebody actually noticed that in the teaser trailer, somebody's wearing a Mageblood and they have this new slot unlocked on their character. In Path of Exile 1, this is where your heist trinket goes, but I don't think that Mageblood is going to add a trinket that changes the way that currency drops in the game. I think it's going to have something to do with charms. What exactly that is? Well, I think that you're going to be able to roll extra charm slots on your character that will constantly apply to you. Because Mark Roberts in the Q&A with Ziggy D, which I just rewatched, mentioned that this item, Mageblood, will be a Divine Orb Sync. So there will be an affix on there that you'll want to get high rolled and constantly be spamming Divine Orbs on, especially if you are a wealthy exile. And the path to becoming rich might be easier and more clearly defined than ever before. I was thinking about the reveal after rewatching it again, and I noticed that now every single league mechanic really hones in on a type of loot that it rewards you with. For example, in Ritual, now you get unique items and omens from Ritual. In Breach, you specialize in jewelry with Breach rings and the Genesis tree. If you love Sockativals and really want to interact with that system, you go south and you start doing expeditions with the Kalgur. Not only is this great for trade players who want to corner a specific market, it's great for people who aren't looking to trade and just want to farm stuff themselves, or they're playing on solo self-found and are really seeking to target farm specific items for their characters. I love seeing this in Path of Exile 2, and I hope future leagues also embody this aspect of the game. Piggybacking off the loot talk there, Temple is going core in this league, but it was not discussed at all during the reveal or in the trailer, but it was in the Ziggy D Q&A. And essentially it sounds like the base reward rooms are being buffed in the Vaal Temple, and snaking has been completely eliminated. We know little else about what's going on there. We'll probably have to wait for the patch notes on May 21st when those come out to learn what's happening to Queen Atziri and anything else going on in there. We also know that we're getting our own Atlas tree for the temple, and the temple itself has a physical static location on the Atlas, just like all the other league mechanics do. I was not a temple snaking enjoyer or participator, and I am pretty glad to see it nuked from the game. Two other large endgame changes that just flew under the radar, and one of them I'm a little disappointed by. The first is the fact that now with pinnacle bosses, I believe all pinnacle bosses, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, you have infinite attempts. Not just the quest boss you have infinite attempts on, but the normal version of the boss, the harder version of the boss, you have infinite attempts on. Once you open up the arena with the key, you keep going until you kill it. I may have misunderstood that. Maybe it's just the quest version, but it sounds like that's not the case. I like the limited attempts idea with the non-quest version of the boss, but the quest version, yeah, infinite attempts, go for it. But I like the attrition aspect, the stakes it adds to the encounter when you have limited tries. And the other big endgame change is it sounds like they've rescaled the number of portals that you get based on the number of affixes on your waystones. And this might be tied together with the greater changes happening to the waystones with pristine and refined and ancient. They didn't seem too clear on what was going on, but it sounds like we might have more portals than before. And of course, with the Atlas Masters, Doriani in particular, you can always have an extra revive if you choose to take that master even if you juice your map to maximum. This is a change I do like. I also saw a lot of people potentially worried about Spirit Walker being very weak as a class because companions right now are pretty weak, and even if we get to tame bosses, the bosses might not be juiced enough. Well, companions, per the Q&A and Ziggy D, are getting a 3x damage increase about. So that's really good for companion builds. You know what's also sick? The meta progression in Endgame now is way better for co-op players. It sounds like when you're progressing through the Atlas, whether it's the Fortress or another node that would grant an Atlas passive point, all players will be rewarded that point as long as they need that point. So beforehand, that would not happen. You'd have to progress your own Atlas, you'd have to run your own Atlas to get your own Atlas points. Now, if you have a wife, a partner, a friend, a brother, a dog who plays Path of Exile 2, you can play with them and you guys can both progress your meta progression together. You won't be progressing the non-party leader's Atlas, but they will be getting physical rewards that boost their character account, which is a W change. I'm sure when my daughter and I play Path of Exile 2 in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, we will appreciate it. Who am I kidding? I might introduce it to her a little bit earlier. I was playing Diablo 2 when I was like 4 years old, and I turned out okay. There's also a new unique being added into the game called Voices. I believe this drops from the new Delirium Pinnacle boss, and it's going to be essentially mandatory for all character builds. Somebody on Reddit pointed this out, and yeah, it's just a flat increase in character power because it can give you minimum 2 jewel spot, because it can give you at minimum 2 extra jewel slots on your passive skill tree. That is an absurd amount of power, especially with the new jewels that are available in patch 0.5. And I think it's so funny, the flavor text on here, only a madman would ignore a god's instructions. It's basically saying, you know, the gods are instructing you to use this. A madman, only a madman, would ignore the use of voices in their build. And then I bet a couple other of these will sneak their way into Path of Exile 2 with this update, but somebody noticed a new crossbow base type, a Trarthan cannon, dropping in the game. I would love to see more new base types, more unique affixes for implicits. Those are always fun to play around, and it's one of the big reasons why I'm excited for 1.0. Act 5, Act 6, they're going to introduce a bunch of new base types to the game, and with them will come some special properties. Oh, and if you were looking for rarity changes to come in patch 0.5, you will have to wait longer. They still think they want to replace it, but they still haven't been able to do legwork on the balance there. In fact, this patch will be a little bit lighter on balance because they focus so much on the endgame rework. There's not a new class, not new weapons, not a ton of balance, and a lot of these sought after changes were pushed in favor of the end game. They confirmed that in the interview with Ziggy D, in the Destin, in the Legendary Drops. Chris was they confirmed this everywhere, and now every article I read. Endgame was #1. I have a feeling Rarity won't be nearly as big an issue this league with Temple being nuked from orbit. There was also a great moment from this interview between Legendary Drops and Jonathan Rogers, in which Jonathan essentially says all feedback is valid. They listen to all feedback, but they don't take all the feedback completely literally. So the phrase, take the feedback seriously, but not literally. Like if players are complaining about something, that gives them a direction in which to go, in which to act, such as the campaign guidepost that they're adding. They don't want to shrink the campaign. They don't want to add a skip. So they're adding a bunch of ways to make the campaign smoother, especially if you're a veteran and if you've played through it multiple times. It's going to be a lot easier on you. They seem to pursue this line of thought in many forms of the game, and this is something that I feel like almost everyone could use in their own lives, including myself. This take people seriously, but not literally. Like if someone is complaining, if someone is angry, you should try to understand where they're coming from, but don't take the vile words that might be coming out of their mouth literally, because if you do, it will affect you pretty heavily. It will take a toll. These darn guys, these developers are so resilient. honestly, I have a thing or two to learn from them, and I have been over the past couple months. And there was also this interesting tidbit where now with tablets, you're able to block League mechanics entirely if you put, say, 3 Delirium tablets in your map device. You will only get Delirium in the map. If you put 2 Abyss and 1 Delirium, you'll get Abyss and Delirium, but nothing else. If you put Delirium, Abyss, and Breach tablets inside your map, you will get those 3 League mechanics. If you put no League-specific tablets in your map, well, then you will just get 3, up to 3 random mechanics. That is the maximum in maps now, down from 4. And I don't think you blocked stuff before. If you put 3 Abyss in there now, you can still have Breach spawn in your maps. That's going to change in 0.5. In all the articles I read from the media outlets who were a part of the press tour for Return of the Ancients, one thing really reigns supreme from Jonathan and Mark in Grinding Gear Games, and that's the fact that 1.0 is coming this year. Act 5, Act 6 are coming with it, but nothing else is promised. Another class is heavily hinted at, but in no way, shape, or form will the game ship with all its classes. And any other promise that has been made in the past several years, I don't think has to be delivered in the eyes of Grinding Gear Games. I think they wanted a good endgame now, they wanted to have all the acts in the game, and they wanted the community to be generally pleased, which I feel like many people are at this point. But for example, having all MTX from PoE 1 ported to PoE 2 before full launch, I don't know if that's going to make it in the game. Obviously, not all leagues are going to be in the game before full launch. Not all classes are going to be in the game. This game, Path of Exile 2, is going to be continuously evolving and catching up to the initial promise for a couple of years, while also adding all this wild, awesome new stuff concurrently. I can only imagine what's going to happen once we get beyond that point, once we get all the classes, once everything is plopped into Path of Exile 2. I'm absolutely pumped. If you are, make sure you leave a like on this video, drop a comment below too. It really helps the channel grow, helps me out in the algorithm. Also subscribe if you like this type of chiller content where I'm not flying, editing, talking really fast. You know, I kind of enjoyed this video. And if you did too, I'd really love to know.